Picture this. Mercy General's night floor, clocks already past midnight, fluorescent lights buzzing like angry wasps. Mara Keene, 47, charge nurse, 18 years of double shifts and soft words over dying beds, stands finishing one last chart. The new attending, half her age and twice as loud, snatches the clipboard right out of her hands. You're obsolete, Keene. These old protocols you keep pushing? Scrap metal. No value. Clock out. We don't need dinosaurs dragging the team down. She doesn't raise her voice, just sets her pen down gentle. Those protocols kept 3 hearts beating tonight. He already has his back to her. Take your pride and go. Modern medicine moved on without you. She walks out into a Chicago blizzard wearing nothing but thin scrubs and a phone that died 2 hours earlier. Snow comes down so hard the streetlights look drowned. At the empty bus stop on Lakeshore, the metal bench freezes straight through her clothes. Shoulders shake. Teeth chatter loud enough she can hear them over the wind. That's when the black Maybach crawls to a stop. Harlan Voss steps out into wind that cuts like wire. 52 years old, the kind of man whose name sits quiet in the business pages and never once in the gossip ones. He doesn't smile, doesn't soften it. You're coming with me. She jerks back, eyes wide. I don't even know you. He just holds out that long black coat like the cold doesn't own him. There's no next bus. Everything's shut down. Put this on. She hesitates. Every smart woman would. Then the freeze wins. Warmth hits her like a room she forgot existed. Smell of cedar and clean wool. He drives her not to Gage Park, but to a quiet lakeshore penthouse. Guest suite already lit. Oversized clothes that puddle at her ankles. In a pot of plain midnight soup, he stirs himself in a plain white t-shirt. Morning comes with a note, cab fare, and his cream business card. She takes the money, leaves the card, walks back into a city still digging out. But here's what that arrogant attending had no clue about, and what Mara herself couldn't see yet. The man who pulled her out of the snow, 6 months from that night, she would pack a single bag and leave him standing silent in a hallway that suddenly felt too big. 14 months after that, he would speak those same 4 words again and mean every ounce of them. Now you have to understand something about Mara Keene. Rent always 2 weeks late. Student loans still chewing her paycheck like a mean dog. No family left that answers the phone. Just her and the work. That night, she'd already done 14 hours, then covered half of another because 2 nurses called out sick. Missed the last bus by 8 minutes. When Harlan's car stopped, she was halfway to real trouble and too stubborn to admit it. He doesn't talk much on the drive. She watches the city blur white past the windows and finally whispers thank you. Corner of his mouth lifts. I'm not most people. Inside the penthouse, everything is quiet the way old money is quiet. Tall windows, fire already lit, nothing flashy, everything solid. 15 minutes later, she pads out in the oversized gray sweater meaning to ask for water and stops cold. He's at the stove like any other man on a cold night, stirring that small pot. Soup, he says. Nothing fancy, just warm. She eats like someone who forgot food could be kind. For days later, she's kneeling in the church basement-free clinic the hospital runs once a month. Blood pressure cuffed gentle on an old man named Ernest whose hands look like maple bark. Across the room, she feels eyes. Looks up. Harlan Voss, standing in the back in charcoal wool. No entourage, just watching. He funds the place every year, he tells her quiet. Didn't know she'd be there. Then he mentions his late mother was a night shift nurse who used to drag him to basements just like this when he was small. That lands somewhere deep. Coffee turns into a walk along the half-frozen lakefront. Walk turns into sitting on a bench talking about bad cafeteria coffee and the particular loneliness of hospital hallways at 3 in the morning. It becomes a rhythm neither of them names. Then comes the moment that proves who she really is. Same clinic basement, next week. Ernest suddenly seizes hard. Eyes roll, body arches off the folding chair. 2 younger volunteers freeze. Somebody yells for an ambulance that won't come fast enough through the snow. Mara is already moving. Voice calm as Sunday morning. She clears the space with 2 quiet orders, cushions his head with her own folded coat, times the minutes on the old wall clock, keeps his airway open with steady hands that never shake. When the worst passes, she is the one wiping spit from his cheek and speaking soft until the old man's eyes find hers again. Harlan watches the whole thing from the doorway. Coat still on, not one word. And in that quiet second, you can almost hear something click behind his ribs. Recognition of a person who holds entire rooms together without ever asking whose name goes on the door. He turns away before she can catch him staring, one hand sliding in his pocket where his mother's old silver nurse's watch has lived for years, ticking steady against his palm like a second heartbeat he thought he'd buried. And you know what stays with a man after a moment like that? It isn't the seizure itself. It's the quiet afterward. The way a person who's used to chaos can fold the whole room back into order with nothing but a calm voice and a folded coat. Harlan walked out into the February cold with his mother's silver nurse's watch still warm in his fist. And that night, he couldn't sleep for the tick of it against the nightstand. Now picture this. 3 days later, the main hospital. The big glass and steel place downtown that still puts Mara's Old Wing name on the visitor map, but took her badge the night of the blizzard, starts fraying at the seams the way a sweater does when you pull one thread. A new patient transfer protocol rolls out on a Monday morning. Fancy binder, color charts. The young administrator who pushed Mara out, a sharp-suited fellow named Trent Holloway, stand in the staff lounge bragging it will streamline multi-floor care by 18%. He's 34, never sat a night shift longer than a photo op, and he says right out loud, "We don't need the old guard second-guessing us anymore." People hear it. Some of them flinch. That same afternoon, a code blue hits the 4th floor telemetry unit. Mr. Delgado, 78, heart rate climbing like a wildfire. The new protocol says one thing. The crash cart layout says another. 2 nurses argue over which sequence the binder wants while the clock on the wall burns minutes nobody can get back. You've been in rooms like that. You know the sound, the shrill alarm, the slap of sneakers, somebody cursing under their breath because the epinephrine drawer is suddenly 2 stations away. Delgado's daughter is outside the glass, hands pressed to the pane, and the whole floor feels the panic rising. Mara isn't there. She's across town at the free clinic, rinsing out that same dented soup pot she brought for the evening volunteers. But word travels on hospital phones the way smoke travels under doors. A charge nurse who still keeps Mara's old handwritten dosing card taped inside her locker texts her, "Wish you were here." Protocol's a mess. Mara stares at the message a long time. She doesn't answer. She just dries her hands on a paper towel and goes back to taking blood pressures, because that's who she is. She holds whatever room she's standing in. Here's the mini crisis that cracks the day open. Around 4:40 p.m., the clinic's ancient furnace coughs once and dies. Basement drops 10 degrees in 20 minutes. Ernest is back for his follow-up, still shaky from the seizure week, and the cold makes his hands tremble worse. The 2 younger volunteers start packing boxes, talking about shutting down early. Outside, the snow is coming sideways. Mara looks at those folding chairs, at the little kids stamping their boots for warmth, and she doesn't raise her voice. She just says, "We finished the list. Then we go." She sends one kid upstairs for every spare blanket the church keeps for the food pantry. She digs out the propane camping heater somebody left in the janitor closet last Christmas. Still smells faintly of pine cleaner. And she gets it lit with steady fingers while her breath shows white. Then she pulls that same small soup pot from under the table, lights the single-burner camp stove, and starts heating the last of the vegetable broth she brought from home. Steam rises. The room softens. People stop shivering long enough to laugh at something small. Harlan shows up halfway through, coat dusted white, because he'd been called about the hospital code blue and decided to swing by the clinic after. He sees her kneeling again, this time coaxing the heater to stay lit, and his hand goes straight to his pocket. That's silver nurse's watch. He rubs the face with his thumb the way his mother used to check a pulse. You can almost hear him thinking, this woman keeps building sane with nothing but broth and blankets. But the hospital mess doesn't stay contained. Trent Holloway, still glowing from his binder, decides the free clinic is an unregulated liability. Tuesday morning, a certified letter arrives for the church board. Polite language wrapping a hard ultimatum. Either the clinic adopts the new hospital transfer protocols and puts a credentialed supervisor on every shift, or the hospital pulls its funding and its rotating residents by month's end. $43,000 a year. The board panics. The pastor calls Mara into the little office that smells of mimeograph ink and leftover coffee. He doesn't look her in the eye when he says they may have to close the doors until someone with the proper letters after their name can take charge. Mara sits very still. Her coat is still the one she used to cushion Ernest's head. She can feel the place where the fabric remembers that weight. She doesn't argue. She just asks, quiet, if she can finish the week's patient list first. The pastor nods, grateful and ashamed at the same time. That evening, Harlan finds her on the same lakefront bench. Wind off the ice. He doesn't sit right away. He stands there with both hands in his pockets, the watch ticking against his knuckles, and he says, they're going to shut you out of the one place that still works. She looks up at him, and this is the part that gets me. She almost smiles. The tired half-smile of somebody who's been here before. I've been shut out of bigger places, she tells him. The work stays. He sits then. The bench is cold through both their coats. And for the first time, he asks the question that's been riding him since the seizure. Where did you learn to run a room like that? Mara watches a freighter far out on the lake. Its running lights tiny against the dark. She doesn't give him the whole truth. Not yet. She just says, long nights, longer years, and a promise I made to a woman who taught me the difference between a title and a duty. Her hand brushes the pocket of her own coat, where she still keeps the cracked plastic name badge they made her surrender the day they walked her out. Badge number 1894, edges worn smooth. She doesn't show it, but you feel it there, the way you feel Harlan's watch. Two quiet pieces of metal, keeping time for people the world tried to forget. The next morning, the hospital's telemetry floor has another scare. A near miss with a potassium drip that the new protocol misfiled. Nobody dis. Everybody knows how close it came. And somewhere in the back of the break room, a senior nurse finally says out loud what half of them have been thinking. This place ran smoother when she was still writing the night orders. The sentence hangs there like frost on glass. It hasn't reached Mara yet, but it's moving. And Harlan Voss, standing his office high above the lake with that silver watch open in his palm, decides the ticking has gone on long enough without an answer. Harlan doesn't call her first. That's the old version of him. The one who waited for paperwork to land on his desk with somebody else's signature already on it. He opens a drawer instead and pulls the thin manila folder he started the night of the seizure. Invoice tabs, staffing rosters, a photocopied night order sheet with the initials MR in the corner, written so small you'd miss it if you weren't looking. He turns the silver watch face down on the blotter, so the ticking presses into the wood, and he starts reading like a man who just realized the building's blueprints were drawn by the person they locked out. Meanwhile, the hospital doesn't wait for anybody's epiphany. 2 days later, Tuesday, 3:41 in the afternoon, the new cardiac step-down unit gets its first real test. A traveler named Darnell Reese, 58, post-stint, starts dropping pressure in a way the glossy protocol chart doesn't account for. The charge nurse, a sharp kid named Priya who still believes the laminated binders are gospel, follows the flowchart 3 steps too far. The drip rate climbs. The monitor sings that high, thin note you never want to hear. Somebody hits the code button. You already know who isn't there. Mara is 3 blocks away at the time, wiping down tables at the church basement thrift shop where she takes 2 afternoons a week just to keep her hands busy. She hears the sirens go past on Lake Shore and doesn't flinch. City sirens are weather to her. What she doesn't know is that upstairs in that hospital, her old night order template is still living in a forgotten share drive under a file named Nobody Thought to Change. _no final_V7. and a first-year resident, panicking hard enough to taste metal, opens it because the new system keeps throwing error screens. He doesn't know who MR is. He just sees a sequence of checks that match the patient's actual body instead of the binder's fantasy. He runs it. Pressure climbs back. Darnell Reese lives to complain about the cafeteria soup, but the scare leaves a mark. Priya finds Harlan in the corridor afterward, still shaking, and she says the sentence out loud that the break room Frost was waiting for. We used the old night orders. The ones with her initials. Harlan doesn't answer right away. He just feels the watch against his ribs and thinks about a cracked badge he hasn't seen yet. That evening, he drives down to the lakefront again. Mara's on the bench, like she owns the cold. Wind off the ice, same as before. He sits this time without asking. Holds out a printout, grainy, folded twice. "These are yours," he says. She looks at the night order sheet the way a mother looks at a kid who grew up while she was working graveyard. Not surprised, just tired of being right. "They're the hospital's," she answers. "I only wrote them down so the new people wouldn't have to learn the hard way." "Badge 1894, he says, and her hand goes to her coat pocket before she can stop it. "You feel that, don't you?" The plastic edge under her fingertips, smooth from years of thumbs. She doesn't pull it out. Not yet, but the leak has started. He asks again, softer, "Who was the woman?" "The one who taught you title versus duty." Mara watches another freighter, lights smaller now. "My charge nurse in 81. Roi Crenshaw. Worked every Christmas so the young ones could be home. Told me a room doesn't care what your last name is. It only cares whether you showed up before the crash. She died 3 beds from the station she built. I kept her voice in my pocket after that. A small breath. Along with the badge, they made me hand over like I stole something." Harlan's quiet a long minute. Then, they're rewriting the telemetry alerts again tomorrow. Juno's idea says the old system was tribal knowledge, and tribal knowledge is liability. Mara almost smiles that same half smile. Then somebody better stand near the crash card. She doesn't volunteer. She doesn't have to. You and I both know what happens when the machine that used to run on her quiet labor starts chewing its own bolts. The mini-crisis lands at 11:17 that same night. A soft reboot of the floor's alarm thresholds. Juno's pet project, blessed by the board in a 12-minute vote, goes live while half the staff is turning over. For 8 minutes, every SPO2 warning on the telemetry floor drops into a quiet queue instead of the main board. 8 minutes. Long enough for a 71-year-old widow 2 doors down from Darnell Reese to desaturate into the low 70s with nobody's pager screaming. A float nurse finds her by accident on a water run. They catch it. Barely. The widow lives. But the near-miss report hits Harlan's inbox at 12:03 a.m. with a subject line so bland it almost hides the blood. Threshold adjustment incident. Review required. He prints it, folds it once, drives to the thrift shop parking lot even though the place is dark and locked. Mara's pickup, a Rustbox 78 Ford the color of old coffee, is still there from her afternoon shift. He leaves the report under the wiper with 3 words scrawled across the top in his heavy hand. They need the badge. He doesn't wait. He goes home to the watch and the lake view and the growing certainty that the woman they treated like scrap is the only one who ever held the roof up. Morning comes sharp. Mara finds the paper, reads it once on the bench before her shift at the thrift shop. The cracked badge rides in her pocket the whole walk over, corners pressing her palm like a second pulse. She doesn't call Harlan. She doesn't storm the hospital. She just stands a little longer in the cold, looking at the freighters, and you can almost hear Lois Crenshaw's old rule in the wind. Show up before the crash. And somewhere above the lobby, Juno Cade is already drafting the memo that will claim the reboot was a success with minor feedback, her name on the letterhead, while the senior nurses pass a different sentence between them like contraband. Bring her back before the next one isn't minor. The sentence is still for whispered hallways, not yet for open floors. But the frost is melting into water, and water finds every crack. Harlan, that afternoon, does something he hasn't done in 11 years of administration. He pulls the archive credential file for badge 1894. Box is in a locked cage in the sub-basement, dust thick as regret, and he starts reading the evaluations nobody ever filed upstairs. Page after page of Lois Crenshaw's block handwriting, then later pages in Mara's. Protocols sketched in margins. A whole shadow operating system built night by night while the titled people slept. You find a faded Polaroid clipped to a 1994 performance review. Mara at a bedside, hair darker, laughing with a patient while holding a clipboard nobody else wanted. On the back, in pencil, she stays when it counts. Elichi. He closes the folder on that, opens the watch, listens to the tick. The machine is still failing one quiet bolt at a time. And the only person who knows where every bolt goes is wiping down donated coats 3 blocks away, badge warm against her ribs, waiting for the work, not the title, to call her name again. And then, on a Thursday that smelled like wet wool and cafeteria coffee gone stale, the roof finally sagged for everybody to see. You ever watch a whole floor realize, all at once, that the quiet one was the load-bearing wall? That's what hit Mercy General at 10:17 a.m. A new surgical suite, Juno's pride, the one she'd christened in the local paper, lost its cold chain continuity on 3 transplant coolers. Alarms stacked. Pages went out. Residents spun in circles. The backup logs that should have unspooled the fix? Blank. The laminated card on the wall that used to walk a body through the cascade? Missing the last 4 steps Mara had penciled in years ago and nobody had ever thought to stitch into the official book. Harlan was already moving. Badge 1894's file under one arm. Watch ticking open in his fist like a second heart. He found Mara at the thrift shop, sorting children's coats by size, the cracked badge still warm in her pocket. He didn't make a speech, just said, "We need the real system, Mara, not the one on the letterhead." She looked at him a long beat. Then she closed the register drawer soft, hung her apron, and walked. By the time they reached the amphitheater-style conference room, every department head, every board member who still bothered to show, Juno Cade in her sharp navy blazer already halfway through a slide deck titled Operational Continuity Wins. The suite upstairs was 22 minutes from irreversible loss. Harlan didn't wait for the agenda. He stood in the open doorway and said, clear enough for the back row, "Badge 1894, Mara Keene. The protocols keeping those coolers viable until 90 minutes ago were hers. Lois Crenshaw's before that. Not a success with minor feedback. A machine somebody else kept oil while the rest of us took the credit. You should have seen the faces. Juno's first, color draining like somebody pulled a plug. Then the senior nurses along the wall. The ones who'd been passing that whispered sentence like contraband. One of them, old Ray Delgado, actually stood up, said, "Show them the margins, Harlan." The one she wrote when nobody was looking. Harlan did, page after page on the overhead. Block handwriting, night shift timestamps. A whole shadow operating system sketched while titled people slept. That faded Polaroid last. Mara at a bedside, laughing, clipboard nobody else wanted. On the reverse, Lois's pencil. She stays when it counts. The room went quiet enough to hear the HVAC catch. Juno tried. "Lord," she tried. Those were collective improvements. Ray cut across her, not unkind, just done. Collective don't stand in a hallway at 3 a.m. rewriting a cold chain car by flashlight, so a kidney still has a shot. She did, for 29 years. While some of us were still learning which end of the stethoscope was which. Mara hadn't sat. She stood near the sidewall, thrift shop sneakers quiet on the tile, cracked badge now clipped plain to her sweater like it had never left. She didn't crow, didn't fold her arms, just waited, the way she always had for the work to need her. Harlan looked straight at the board table. "We lose the transplant window in 14 minutes if somebody doesn't walk us through the real cascade, the one that isn't in the glossy binder." Every head turned. Mara stepped forward, voice steady, carrying the same weight it had on 1,000 night floors. Shut secondary vent on chiller 3. Manual override is behind the false panel Lois labeled with a grease pencil in 97. Still there if nobody painted over it. Redirect power from the idle dialysis loop on B. That buys you the 40 minutes the software stopped counting. She walked them through it, one concrete bolt at a time, while 2 residents raced on open radio and the whole room listened like church. Cooler temps climbed back into the safe band at 10:41. 3 organs still viable. 3 families still getting the call they prayed for. Silence again, then slow, scattered clapping that built until even the board joined. Juno didn't clap. She sat very still. When the meeting broke and people spilled into the corridor, trading the story already, she caught Mara near the service elevator. Just the 2 of them and the smell of floor wax. Voice rough, smaller than it had ever been in a memo. I thought the machine ran itself. I needed it too, because if it needed you, then everything I put my name on was borrowed. She swallowed. I'm sorry. Not for the optics. For the years, I let you carry it invisible. That was theft. And I knew it the day I signed the letter that turned your badge into a paperweight. Mara studied her. Not cold, just thorough, the way she studied chart. Then say it where they can hear. The ones who watched you do it. Juno nodded once. Hard. Next morning's all hands, every shift that could spare a body packed into the same amphitheater. Juno stood up without slides. Said Mara's name first. Said Lois Crenshaw's. Said the truth without varnish. The reboot had ridden on protocols built by the woman they'd ushered out with a cardboard box and a cracked badge. Said she had claimed the success and nearly cost them 3 lives doing it. Said she was stepping aside from the operation share effective that Monday, so Mara Keene could take the role that had always been hers in everything but title. Public. Witnessed. The original mockers in the seats, some of them wiping eyes they pretended were allergies. Mara accepted with a nod and a single sentence. We'll start with the night shift cards. The ones that still work. The reinstatement held, and the floors ran quieter than they had in years. But 6 months from that blizzard night, the old fractures found daylight. Titles and headlines, and the sudden weight of being seen pressed in until the penthouse hallway felt too narrow to breathe. Mara packed a single bag and left Harlan standing silent in that hallway that suddenly felt too big. She went back to her own small place across the city. The work was finally hers again in the open. She needed to know she could carry it without the Maybach idling at the curb. 14 months after she walked out, snow started falling the same hard way it had the first night. She was on the lakefront bench after a late shift, shoulders tight against the wind, when the black car rolled up. Harlan stepped out into the cut of the cold. 54 now, quieter than before. He didn't smile, didn't soften it. You're coming with me. This time the words landed different, full of every hard month, every almost, every lesson the watch had ticked through. She looked at the long black coat he held out, at the man who had almost lost the only thing that ever made the money matter, and it stayed anyway. The freeze didn't win. She chose the warmth. Smell of cedar and clean wool felt like a room she was ready to remember. Now, the freighters still slide past that same stretch of water, but Mara watches them from the nursing director's office. Same lake view Harlan once kept to himself. The cracked badge sits under glass on her desk beside Lois's old Polaroid and the open watch that still keeps honest time. She wears a new one on her fob, but the broken one stays where fingers can find it when a resident gets too sure the software knows better than a body that's been listening for decades. Harlan brings coffee on Thursdays. They don't talk much. Just sit with the tick and the water. Juno rotated out to a smaller clinic across town. Lower payday, higher nights on the floor. She sends a note every few months. Handwritten, getting shorter on excuses, longer on what she notices when she finally shuts up and looks. Ray Delgado still calls Mara boss, like it's a private joke they both earned. And the night cards? Every one of them carries a small stamped line now at the bottom. Revised in the margins, 1994, present. Stay before the crash. MKULC. Here's what never leaves me about Mara's story. Some people spend a lifetime holding up roofs nobody bothers to look at until the rain comes in. They don't need the letterhead. They need the work to matter and the people under it to make it home. Age doesn't make that obsolete. Arrogance does. And the remedy isn't revenge. It's the quiet moment when the room finally turns, sees the hands that kept the bolts tight, and says the name out loud. Dignity doesn't shout. It just keeps showing up. And when the frost melts, water finds every crack, including the ones in a hard heart that finally learns how to say sorry where the light can reach it. That's the whole of it, not the title. A stay.